parents came here illegally. You should not benefit from your parents coming here illegally. And that's what Mr. Bingham said. That's exactly what he said. If you're not here legally, then you can't be a citizen, regardless if you're born here. Just like a diplomat, children are not citizens.
Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now, here's your host, Jack Moore.
And we're back. More to consider. Jack and Charles. Charles, how are you, brother?
I'm doing just fine.
All right, we just did a show where we were talking about government shutdown and some of the underlying policies and/or political views as it relates to people not born here or ones that have not been naturalized or, actually have become citizens of the United States. So illegal aliens, people, nobody's illegal. Okay, but they are in an undocumented status, whatever these buzzwords or code words are to use to try to soften the blow as much as possible. They're simply not U.S. citizens. So you, at the end of our last show, had mentioned something about the census. And for those of you that kind of want to know the back history, it's in the Constitution. So all this was in the Constitution. So in the first Congress was 1789. And, they come off the ratification of the Constitution. The Bill of Rights had not yet been ratified, but that's when Washington takes over as president, serving from 1789 to 1797. He's first president. They sit the first Congress, blah, blah, blah. And they decide 1790, we're going to do a census because it's in the Constitution. They're saying, what's a census? We're going to go out there and head count. Then we're going to put people into the House of Representatives, or we're going to allow for seats in the House of Representatives based upon the population of the several states. So we're going to know the number of people that are in Congress, and it was capped, or it reached the 435 it's at now for the House, and I think 1915-ish or something like that. It's probably during that whole progressive movement, and it's been sitting at 435 ever since, which has now made it so if you're a member of the House, based upon the U.S. population now, you're representing like 850,000 people. Like at one time it was 30,000 and it just kept climbing up. Now, I say all that to say this. There's a lot in that. And, we have kicked this around several times too. For those of you that need a history lesson on the 3/5 compromise, once again, at the time that was in the Constitution, it had to do with the abolitionists not wanting the South to count slaves for purposes of representation in Congress, and the slave states or the South being all for that. So that was all part of that setup. How do we count these people? And in what form? And the 3/5 compromise was that all people that were not free, I can't remember exactly what the wording was, but those people that we basically knew that were in bondage would be counted as 3/5 of a person, 3/5 of a whole person for that purpose. Now, 1790 is a pretty good ways away, right, in time, and we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So the nation is well over 200 years of age, and we've been doing this census thing for some time. So you might ask the question, did they address counting people that were here not in a legal status? And right now, to answer that question, yes, illegal immigrants are counted in the U.S. Census, as the Constitution mandates that the census include all persons living in the country, regardless of their immigration status. Excluding them could affect congressional representation and federal funding. Well, that's for sure. I'm just kind of getting that from a general definition of what that means. And what is your take on this, Charles? What do you think? Do you think that there's going to be a move at all to better define who you count? Do you think that's going to work? Yeah.
So while you were giving your introduction, I was actually looking up some language from John Bingham.
Mm-hmm.
And he essentially is the author, pretty much, or at least very influential when it comes to the 14th Amendment.
Right.
And one of the things that he said, and I was trying to find the exact quote. Sorry, listeners and watchers, I didn't get it beforehand because I wanted to read exactly what he said about that.
Right.
But I'm just going to pretty much paraphrase and say that the way he looked at it, and I'm going to use birthright citizenship to answer the question that you just posed.
Mm-hmm.
He had said that when it comes to birthright citizenship, which the Supreme Court is going to rule on this in the
Right.
next several months, it said it did not apply to anyone who was not here legally. Period. That's what he said. This is the author. When people have said this for who knows how long. Well, we could only go back and know what the framers were saying about something. Well, how
Right.
about this? This dude pretty much was the author of the 14th Amendment. He said it did not apply to people who were here illegally, just like it
Mhm.
didn't apply to diplomats and their children. Just you can be a diplomat here and your kid could be born here, but your kid is not a citizen. You're not.
Yeah.
Right? So when it comes
Well,
to
and
the
let me just
census,
say, let me just say real quick too. A lot of
sure.
times you look at things like this, it's all in the context of the time. So
Yeah.
if you look at I say this a lot, and I've mentioned this a lot. When you look at the, there were 12, or there was hundreds of amendments that were proposed, which led to the Bill of Rights. 12 went to an actual vote, and one of them, like I said, was the one that 200 years later got ratified. That the members of the the members of the Congress, House and Senate, couldn't vote themselves a pay raise unless another election cycle had passed. That was not, it didn't make ratification in 1791, but it did in the mid 1990s. 1990s, 200 years later. And then the other one was Madison's whole idea about how they would do the increase of the members of the House. Nobody understood what he was saying. He's brilliant. So you're left with 10. Then you had an 11th and 12th Amendment, which basically addressed states suing each other and the election of 1800, which was a big mess, which led to getting the vice president on the ticket with the presidential nominee. So that was addressed. Then you have basically 60 years of quiet, roughly. It's not
Yeah.
much going on with the amendment process. But then you have the end of the American Civil War. And if you saw the movie Lincoln, not that, movies tell all history, but they did pretty well with this, I think. When you have Daniel Day-Lewis playing Lincoln in the movie,
Yes.
what's he fighting about? His people are saying, hey, man, you can't be pushing this amendment to end slavery, because the Emancipation Proclamation, for everybody, did not. All that Lincoln said was the slaves in the rebelling states are now free, so as to make it a political issue with Great Britain, et cetera, et cetera. So they had to have an amendment. And I think that Lincoln was right. If we're going to end slavery among the several states, got to have a constitutional amendment. 13th. 14th, have to do something about citizenship. 15th, addressed voting. I say all
Right.
that to say this. Here's the wording they use, though. This is the actual wording. Section 1, 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdictions thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So you have the due process, you have the equal protection clause, but that first wording, what does it mean when it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States? And you're saying the very person who is chief in drafting the 14th Amendment is saying they never contemplated people here illegally.
No, he's not saying that he never contemplated people here illegally. He just said if they were here illegally, then they didn't count.
Well, that's what I meant. I
Okay.
inartfully said
Okay.
that. What I was trying to say is they would not have envisioned in writing this. Oh yeah, we mean people that just happen to cross the border or have some kind of status
Right.
that is not in alignment with being a citizen. Now, what did the Dred Scott decision say? Remember the Dred Scott decision, Tawney says that blacks have no rights of
Right.
citizenship or any rights that need to be acknowledged by this white society, 1857. And this is, our friend, we got into this argument one time about, he was upset about Roe versus Wade being overturned. And I'm like, oh, so the constitutional laws are the decisions of the Supreme Court are always right? He goes, well,
All right.
you shouldn't just willy-nilly overturn them. And I'm like, well, what about Dred Scott? And he goes, well, that got overturned by the Civil War. And I said, no, it really got overturned by the 14th Amendment. The war certainly led to that, but the 14th Amendment kind of took that Supreme Court decision and threw it away and said, no, now we're declaring that the people who had been slaves are now citizens.
Okay.
Question is, did they contemplate anyone else that just crossed the border and what their legal status was.
Okay.
So you're saying what's in the works now?
Okay. Can I read what he said?
Yeah,
What Bingham
absolutely.
said?
Shoot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
And okay, this is what he said. He said, and actually, this was not John Bingham. I don't know how I got that right. Got that wrong. It's Jacob Howard
Okay.
of Michigan who said this. He was the one, really the author. He said, Mr. Howard, and he's talking to someone.
Mm-hmm.
This amendment, which I have offered, is simply declaratory of what I regard as the law of the land already, that every person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction is by virtue of natural law and national law a citizen of the United States. This not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. So it makes it pretty clear as to who he's talking about and who he's not talking about.
Right.
Illegal aliens are not in that class. So you have to be here legally within the confines of the United States on United States soil to be counted when it comes to a citizen, if you're born here, citizen. But would you not say that the same requirements should be for the census? I can't come up with a reason why they should be any different. I really can't, because if you're going to say that they're different, then you just import what? You can import the entirety of I don't know, Saudi Arabia here in somebody's district, and then say, oh, but they're here, so we have to count them. And next thing you know, well, sorry, Texas and Virginia or whoever, Florida, we have to take congressional seats from you because you imported the entirety of Saudi Arabia to Los Angeles. No, that's not how it's supposed to be. This is not. And that's coming from the person who pretty much wrote the 14th Amendment, that no, this isn't the case. And for the Democrats to be out there trying to say, well, we're going to count everybody. No, and that's why the Republicans are actually taking them to the Supreme Court. Yeah, we're about to see. We're about to find out when it comes to who is a constitutionalist and who is not when it comes to this.
Let's look at that. I think that I want to see that exact wording in the U.S. Constitution empowers the Congress to carry out the census in such manner as they shall by law direct. Article 1, Section 2. I want the exact language. One of the things, though, I was kind of looking up here, too, that you go through, and I don't remember it. I had a class on it in law school, and you forget some things after a while. I could kind of look it up. But what we do know in what you're taught in law school is statutory interpretation, right?
Okay.
And my memory of it was, I had a really good professor on this, and again, it kind of slips me now, but you go down a hierarchy of where you start, and the easiest is plain language. Like, you just look at the text, and if it says something and you're not so quite sure, there is a point you get to legislative history, meaning what did they say on the floor? So, like, if there's a debate in the House or Senate, and it's like, Congressman Charles, very well that what we're saying is, okay, so it's in the record, right? That they're pissing and moaning about something. The language ends up being born or naturalized, and they're like, they did say born, didn't they? And then, so on the plain surface of or on the plain face of the language, this is where we've gotten, is that it says born. So if you bring somebody across, and have a child on this side of the border, well, clearly they're born here. They must be U.S. citizens. That's the whole argument. So you're at the stage where you go the deeper. And I agree with you. You open with, everybody kind of says, how could we possibly know what they meant? No, you're right. But you have to go to that next step and look at their writings to find out. Or you can look at, but then there's a legislative purpose. Like, what are they trying to do? Well, here, clearly, what was the legislative purpose? Established citizenship for people who were already here who had not been deemed citizens. Go ahead.
So the 14th Amendment essentially was supposed to only be in effect for one day. I mean, if you really think about it, one day, and that's it.
That's that's an interesting point.
It was what you just said. It was put into place for the slaves who they didn't know what to do with when it came to their citizenship. That's why the
Well,
14th Amendment is there.
I'll go further.
Okay?
Clearly, if you're going to bring the South back into the Union, it's 1868. They're in the process. It's still during
Right?
Reconstruction, right? Okay. So what's the major concern? Think about it. What's the major concern? What's South Carolina going to do about this? Without the 14th Amendment, you can say, hey, 13th Amendment just freed the slaves. What the hell does that mean? South
Right?
Carolina eventually with Jim Crow did the very thing they feared. And that has been argued with the 12 years of Reconstruction. With the Hayes-Tilden election, they made this bargain. They pulled the troops out. They ended the military districts. They pulled the troops out. And that's also when they passed the law of posse comitatus, that the
Hmm.
military wouldn't be cops anymore. All that gets cleared. So they leave the South to their own devices. And what do? They
They
turn around and create. They
right,
just
right.
basically, yeah, right, exactly.
They went
And they
rogue.
basically, it went rogue, right?
Yeah.
But the reason the 14th Amendment, the language was in there, was to say all the states, privileges and immunities, equal protection of the law, and that's what leads to the famous, and this is where everything really starts to come into focus, is Plessy versus Ferguson, famously
Hmm.
1896-ish or whatever it was. They said separate but equal was constitutional.
Right.
And Homer Plessy was a man, under that whole measurement of race, was a man that was 7/8 white,
Right.
but he became the 1/8 black. And it was a test case. He purposely got on a car, a railroad car that was supposed to be whites only. He gets arrested. Hey, you got to go downtown. And it leads to a Supreme Court case. What's interesting in there was a guy named Harlan. It's somebody told me to read this one time. You got to read this. And I'm trying to remember his first name, but Justice Harlan, he writes the dissent on it. And he says, and this is really deep. I'm pretty sure he'd been a slave owner too, if I'm not mistaken. I think he came from a slave owning family or something. I think he's from the South, but he said, you can never recognize race in the law. Like what we're doing here, talking about gradations of race and the rest and saying this is
Hmm.
it can't be that. Like the Constitution, and I know this is an unpopular phrase with people, literally has to be colorblind.
Right.
Like when you start to get into well, you're this much white and you're this much black, or you're going to have problems with you shouldn't be going down those roads. And it's in his dissent in Plessy versus Ferguson, which is overturned by, Brown versus
Brown.
Board of Education.
Right.
Right. So here's the actual language, though. Here's Article 1, Section 2. Representatives and direct taxes. Representatives in the House and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed 3/5 of all other persons. The actual enumeration shall be made, so this is the census language. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of Congress, as I mentioned, it was 1789, so I guess they said by 1792. But they got to do it within 3 years, and then every 10 years on
Right.
the zero. After the first meeting of the Congress, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct, the number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000. That was the old House rule. 30,000 people,
Right.
that meant one person. And then that just got blown out. And that's what Madison was trying to address with that other amendment, was what's going to happen when the country grows, how we're going to grow the members of the House. And if they'd followed his plan, I think they'd say, I think I heard it's be like 8,000 members of the House.
Right. Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
All right. And that seems impractical. Have at least one representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, blah, blah, blah. And they give the numbers based upon where they are now. The Census Clause reflects several important constitutional determinations. that comparative. All right, well, let's just go back and just look at the plain language. What do you think they said in there about counting people that would make you think that they're saying potentially? And I know I'm reading it, and you're not. You just heard me say it, or heard me read it. Well, let me read it again on that. Okay. Respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're saying there's a class of free persons. Go ahead.
It just says free persons, and race has nothing to do with it. That's one
No,
thing.
I get. I'm not going down there. I'm going to the road of where the aliens are going to come down. Right? Because
it's not even mentioned.
It's not. It's
not even mentioned.
So, okay. It's but again, now this is the time capsule stuff. Could we go back and we knock on the table as they're arguing, they're writing this down? Hey guys, what? You got 200 years from now, they're going to start counting people that are here that are not legally here. Sorry, what's that? Yeah. They're going to be these people
Right.
that they might be like, wait a minute, Jim, we didn't count. Go ahead.
But isn't that the beauty of the amendment process? Because in that amendment process, we end up with the 14th Amendment, where it is the person who, again, pretty much wrote it, got really detailed in his argument for it, saying that these are the people that we're talking about, and these are people that we're not talking about. And that's the beauty of the amendment process.
And you're going down a road, I got to think this through, because okay, you're right about, I think, the birth part for sure, because there's enough information from that analysis of from this chief architect drafter of the 14th Amendment to say, yeah, I don't think he meant to count people that were born here whose parents weren't legally here, whatever. That's part of it. But I still don't know that necessarily, it addresses citizenship, but I don't think it necessarily addresses census. If census means you count every human being here, regardless of their status, could you read? I'm just saying, in fairness, could you not read that into that language?
No, because remember, in the reading, it specifically singles out, or should I say, excludes Indians. So you can't say that it is everybody.
It says Indians not taxed.
Well, but the Indians weren't taxed anyway, because they were technically they weren't considered part of the United States.
I understand,
and it's still not to this day.
Okay, but the way this is worded, it would imply that there may have been some Indians that were taxed if they had some kind of, because I mean, right here, including those bound to service of years and excluding Indians not taxed. And that could be taken two ways. That could be, in the Indians who are not taxed, or it could be saying those Indians not taxed.
Okay, how about this?
And I don't know what
I know we're really going
taxation.
Dude, we're really going into the weeds for this one.
No, but it's good. This is the kind of discussion they need to be having in Congress.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree on that. Sure. I wonder, are they talking about the Indians who reside on a reservation within a district?
Do you think reservations as that term existed in 1791?
Yes. Yeah, because they're talking about it. They're saying Indians not taxed. What other Indians could you think of that wouldn't be subject to being taxed?
All right. Again, just so we can move through this. Yeah, and I'm with you, brother. We both got to check that out. We're going to do some research. But I'm just saying the way that's worded, it could be read one of two ways. It could be read let's see, where did I see this? And excluding Indians not taxed. I'd read that to say, yeah, those Indians that are not taxed, we don't count them. But the ones that are, we do. Or it could be saying and excluding Indians, because they're not taxed. And I don't read it that way, but I'd have to go find out if there are any Indians that are taxed. All right. But what they're saying is whole people. They're talking about those bound to service a term of years, like indentured servitude, sounds like to me, right? Excluding the Indians and 3/5 of all other persons. And when it says 3/5 of all the persons, they're umbrellaing those people who are in bondage. Fair?
Yes.
That's what it's saying. Okay. That is all it says. I don't see anything in this. Being fair to it, I don't see anything in here because, again, this is 70 some plus years ahead of the 14th Amendment. and they're not contemplating what we're talking about right now, and they're not contemplating the American Civil War. Maybe they are, but yeah, they don't know how it's going to play out. They don't really know the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment's a Band-Aid for a lot of the other structures of the Constitution. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. So that being said, I can see where your 14th Amendment language does address who's here legally as a citizen and who's not. But I don't think the census necessarily does. I think the census says count everybody.
The Constitution was ratified in 1789.
The Constitution was, I think the ratification, the date is 1787. And then the states start to individually ratify it. And then the Bill of Rights is ratified in 1791. But September 17th, 1787 is considered the day of the ratification of the Constitution.
Well, I'm going to have to go back to what I was saying about the Indians and their reservations. It seems as though the first Indian reservation in the United States was established in 1786.
Okay.
So I'm sure they did not count them when it comes to taxation. And by default, they're not counting them when it comes to the census.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I will say that it was something else that struck me though too. And I think this is fair. I think this is a really good argument. The 14th Amendment is going to further define this Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, the enumeration clause, how we count in the census. I think it's absolutely now dictated by the 14th Amendment. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Because I tell you why. I tell you why. Because a big part of this was struck. The 3/5 compromise is clearly struck with the 14th Amendment.
Yes.
So if that supersedes that language, and the 14th Amendment is addressing who it doesn't apply to, fair, like you're saying, what this gentleman put in, tell me his name again.
Bingham. Yeah, no, he's Bingham or Bishop. It's one of the two. I get him mixed up.
No, you had the right guy because I looked him up, and now
it was Bingham then.
Spot here.
Yeah.
No, it was Howard. Yeah, Jacob Howard was a key figure in the drafting of the 14th Amendment. Yeah, you had shifted from Bingham to, you said Howard.
Sorry about that, folks.
You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. We're actually doing this on the fly. We're doing something you probably don't do in a lot of shows, right? We're kind of doing this on the fly. We're figuring it out as we go. But I do think, the 14th Amendment, since it overturns the 3/5 compromise. I mean, it eliminates the 3/5 compromise because the very people that were not being counted as whole persons because of slavery are now being addressed in the 14th Amendment as citizens.
Right.
And it's overturning Dred Scott. We got that too. So if it's saying all this other stuff relative to legal status within the country, I think that's a good piggyback to make an argument. Now, talk to me.
Well, I was just go ahead and finish because I was just going to bring up something that happened.
No, I just think it's a piggyback. But you are saying, and I'm out of the loop on the news on this. You are saying, I think, that there are people that are attempting to address this with legislation or something, or maybe,
the Supreme Court is going to rule on it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, they've already accepted it.
It got there because the Trump administration pushed it.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly right. And the Democrats pretty much helped them with it.
Yeah, I do remember.
Yeah,
I do remember that. And what's the analysis? It's probably going to be determined in the way Trump sees the world.
Well, I think this is more of a constitutional thing. This isn't a living constitution. No, these are what the words mean, and we're going to take it a step further to find out exactly what the person who authored it meant. And he wrote extensively on what he meant about this.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they're going to argue against this. I really don't. I don't.
Well, it's something I used to say at the community college level, teaching criminal justice classes. We would read all of these major cases as it related to criminal law generally, but there were certain cases you had to cover just to give them an overview of and I would say to them, the people that end up sitting in the Supreme Court, and it used to be a run there where it was Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. They pretty much all had gone to Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. Now I've seen a couple slip in from other schools. Notre Dame, I think, has had somebody in, and I don't know. But it's pretty much Yale, Harvard, and a lot of Stanford law school that makes the Supreme Court. I said, hey, let me ask you something. I would ask the students this. What does a 5-4 decision by its very nature imply?
That it probably could have gone either way depending on how
It's a
somebody got
coin
up that
flip.
morning. Yeah.
But it's a coin flip. Well, it may
Yep.
not even be so much of how they got up. It's just that the court's constituted 5-4 to a certain direction, and something comes in and they get to vote on it, or they get to do the work of writing an opinion on that fact. They come
Hmm.
up with that. So what I was trying to explain to them, and I think it's human nature when you're 18 to 27 years old or 22 years old or whatever, 37 years old when you're in college, your mind goes to, well, tell me what the answer is. And this is also an aspect of in the public schools, the standards of learning. They want to know they do. No, just don't give me the lecture. Just tell me. I'm like, well, what I'm telling you is if there's a 5-4 decision, then just one other member, one guy off, one gal or guy off, and another one in, it becomes a 5-4 the other direction. Are you telling me that they were better to able to divine what the law is, or do you think it was just political will? And it is. It's all politics. It's all politics.
In this case, though, I don't think it's going to be politics. I think this is going to be philosophy. Well, no, it's going to be the
All right.
Constitution. They're going to rule on the Constitution this time because they have
Okay.
so much
Well,
evidence.
I know I'm throwing a grenade in the room on that in a YouTube acceptable way, but it's like this. It's like, I swear, it's like the show I had with the guy who was there, was very Trump supporter, God bless him, real patriot guy. And he's trying to tell, we got in that Second Amendment argument, and we got into that whole thing about what did they say and what did they do and what did they mean. And I said, when they decided Heller, which was a District of Columbia case, and the Supreme Court, as so configured at the time, had the votes to say you have a God-given right to home protection, that's not what the Second Amendment's about.
No.
I didn't disagree. I did not disagree. And the point I made was, when I made that point on that show, that in Pennsylvania, when they wrote their state constitution, and I've said this a million times, it was hunt Bambi, home protection, shoot at targets, do whatever the hell you want to. So Pennsylvania was addressing the republic we were in. We're going to say, here are your gun rights.
Hmm.
But what the Second Amendment was addressing is, and this is why I said it on the show and a guy poo-pooed it, I think the Commonwealth of Virginia could have regulated firearms up until the 14th Amendment and what the incorporation doctrine says or whatever. Do you incorporate the Second Amendment rights against the states? But they were saying, states, go handle your militias. When we call you up for military service, send your troops. Fair?
Yes.
So why does Pennsylvania feel it necessary to say what all your gun rights are? Because they're saying, hey,
Oh,
within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, okay? So the reason I'm saying all that is, when you get these people in the Supreme Court, they will make up stuff that they like. I'm saying I don't think that Heller was fair to say, as far as they went as to the gun ownership within your home for self. It's not about that. It was about the militias. It was about no standing armies. I've said, I
yeah.
only say that to say they can read into it whatever the hell they want to. They can, and they will.
No, I,
Go
I
ahead.
I agree, but I'm just trying to figure out what the argument is going to be for the other side. That's what I'm trying to
Oh, I
figure
think it's
out.
going to be the only argument if you want to say the other side has. The only thing I see is the plain wording of the text, and that's what they've been going on.
Well, but
No,
they
you talking about on
haven't
the
been.
census? You
Hmm.
talking about the census? Are we back to
Uh,
the
Birthright
immigration
citizenship. Well, birthright
birthright citizenship?
citizenship, they kind of sort of they really do go hand in hand. They really do.
I think. Well, I think this addresses. I think you're right. The 14th Amendment and that outside language in the reasoning is important to who you count. I think
Yeah.
that's a great point that you're making. I'm saying, though, when it opens with all persons born or naturalized, I think when she says all persons born, that's what these people cling to. And I get it.
Oh,
They're arguing the birthright citizenship, saying if you're born here, you're a citizen. Go talk to me.
okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
say for instance, your friendly neighborhood illegal street corner pharmaceutical distributor,
Okay.
and
Got
I
you.
use my profits to go buy my mother a house,
Here
and then
or
I get
back to
busted.
but where are you buying the house?
It doesn't matter. I bought her a house with my profits from selling drugs.
But I'm
Okay?
saying in the States or back in where you're from?
No, right now. Right now.
Okay, right here in the States.
Yeah. Regardless of what state it's in, it's illegal for me to sell
No, I
illegal
understand,
drugs. Okay.
yeah, right. Exactly. I agree with that.
So
Yeah.
so I'll go and buy my mother a house, and then DEA catches up with me. What do you think they're
Hmm.
going to do with my mother's house? They're going to take it
Well,
from her, right?
the asset forfeiture
Oh,
is pretty outlandish, but
oh,
yeah,
hold
it
on,
does
hold on.
happen.
Yeah, so they're going to take they're going to take my mother's house from her because they're going to say that she got the house through my sale of illegal drugs. I've gotten the profits came from me doing something illegal, right? Right?
They may, but okay. But
Uh,
let me interject real
Generally,
quick. What I saw when grandma, I saw a story like it was on YouTube and it was
oh,
really horrendous. It was a grandmother who owned her home outright, and her
yeah,
son slinging drugs at the back of the house. His drug
no,
money has nothing to do with right. They confiscated her house as a drug house.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I
Okay.
understand,
Well,
but
I don't know that if the mother is in the house and the drugs aren't being sold out the back door that she's necessarily going to lose at that. You got a great point. If they can say all the proceeds that went into building it or buying it were drug related, do I
yeah,
think that would preclude them from asset forfeiture? Probably not. You're right. But I'm just
okay.
saying that a lot of people that get burned and lose their house, it's because of the activity in or around
No,
the
no,
house.
I understand, but I'm specifically talking about me getting all this money, giving it to my mother, and she's going, or I go and buy the house for her, and she's living in the house. Okay. Now,
I
with
don't
that
know. I
said,
don't know,
well,
Charles,
hold
because
on,
I'm
hold on,
telling
hold on,
you,
hold
if
on,
you're
man,
doing
hold
the
on,
drug
don't,
sales in California and you buy her
hold,
house in Florida, I don't
dude,
know that they're going to come get the house. I
don't
don't know
get too
that.
much
Go ahead.
into the weeds here. Don't get too much in the weeds, man.
Oh, yeah,
My
you're
point
asking me.
is,
You're asking me. If they're going to. Yeah. Okay.
my point is,
Is there a chance
if
they're
they're
taking
going to
mom's house?
say,
Yes.
if they're going to take my mother's house because the 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 money that came, the money that was made to buy the house was through illegal means that I shouldn't have had in the first place, they're probably going to take the house. What is the difference between somebody coming here illegally, what their children are supposed to benefit from me coming here illegally? Is that what you're trying to say? Not you, but I'm just speaking in generalities. No, I'm sorry. Your parents came here illegally. You should not benefit from your parents coming here illegally. And that's what
Okay.
Mr. Jacob said, or Mr. Bingham said. That's exactly what he said. If you're not here legally, then you can't be a citizen, regardless if you're born here. Just like a diplomat, children are not citizens, even though they're born here. Tell me why is
I
it
don't
that these
disagree.
people don't understand that people who are here
Go ahead.
legally, diplomats, they're here
Yeah.
legally, and their kids are not even considered citizens. What in the hell makes you think that people here that are here illegally, their kids are considered citizens? I don't know what kind of fantasy land these people are living in. I just
I
don't.
don't think it's a fantasy. Okay. 14th Amendment, Section 1, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the states wherein they reside. I
I
think
don't.
that could be fairly I think that could be fairly read to say if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States.
I have
I
a
think that's
hard
fair.
time. I have a hard time. Uh,
Do I think that was the intent of the drafters of the 14th Amendment? Absolutely not. Can you have peripheral language around that shows that it wasn't? Yeah, and I agree with you. I agree with all you're saying. I'm just
okay.
saying there is a way to read that and get what they get. That's what they get to that because they want to get to that. I don't disagree.
Well,
Do I think do I think in any sane world people can come over a board or have a child and make that child a citizen? Hell no, I don't. But do I
well,
think there's a reading here? Yes, go ahead.
just like you said earlier about the 14th Amendment, pretty much, you know, eliminated the need for the three-fifths compromise. I think the 14th Amendment could be
Well,
used.
okay. Let me just clarify my state. It's not that it it eliminated the need for the three-fifths compromise. And I probably did say it inartfully like that. What I'm saying is it overturned the three-fifths compromise.
Okay, well
Because the
then
whole
the
three-fifths
14th.
compromise was about counting three-fifths of a whole person for people in a certain state of bondage. They're not. Now we
Yeah,
just
they're
had a
not.
13th
Yeah,
Amendment that, right. So now that they're not, the three-fifths compromise goes away. It has to go
I th-
away because there's nobody else to count in that fashion.
I think
Yeah.
we're about to find out from the Supreme Court as to what they really meant when it came to, or when it comes to, not just the census, but birthright citizenship. I think we're about to find out finally. Finally, we're going to get an
Yeah, and
answer.
I see yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap here between this Article 1, Section 2 and what they meant when they said these things in the census, and certainly the 14th Amendment. A lot of overlap, a lot of stuff going
Yeah.
on there that makes
Oh
for
yeah.
good discussion. However, um, I think there are two tracks there. The one's going to be, what are we saying when we say birthright citizenship or no? And then there's going to be the census. Again, I think a fair reading of the wording of the census would say count every human being, regardless of their status. But I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying, though. You should be up there helping these guys out with this argument. Tell them to get into this, it's peripheral stuff, but it does go into the legislative intent. Although it's an amendment, I guess it's still, it's still some people having to draft this that have a legislative background because they're writing it into law. Or, well, that's the thing too. I actually mentioned that about the First Amendment. Well, I'd made an argument one time, and somebody in the comments said, when I got into once again, the Second Amendment, about whether the states could have regulated firearms, he said supremacy clause. Well, the Second Amendment's not a law, and neither is the First Amendment. They're not right.
Right.
They're not laws. What they say
Yeah.
is Congress shall pass no law abridging. So it just says what you can't write a law. So you can write a law, and it can be in violation of the meaning of that particular amendment. It's not really a law. So I say that to say, when you get into this reading of the 14th Amendment, and I think that this Article 1, Section 2, I do think there's a fair reading, count all the people. But I do like what you're saying with this intent of the framers of the 14th Amendment and this peripheral writing, kind of talking about like, yeah, this doesn't mean count all these people. We're not talking about that. If they address that, I think that's a good bridge back to the census. Since we've already
Yeah.
taken from the census language this overturning of the three-fifths compromise, why can't we also go back and say, oh yeah, when it came to this language of what are whole persons or other persons or whatever, because I don't think anybody right now is in servitude for years or indentured servitude anymore either, right? Term
No,
for
not
years.
that I
I
know
don't
of.
think
No,
anybody.
it's been a
Right.
few years.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Right. So if the indentured servitude's gone, all that's left is, and I don't know the status, I would imagine there are numbers of Native American people who are taxed. And I guess in still some of the reservation settings, they're not.
They're not.
Is that right?
That's correct. They're
But I'm
not.
thinking some settings they are.
Not on a reservation.
I said in some settings, a person who could be
Oh, yes.
considered
Yes.
100% of a particular
Yeah.
right, they would
Yeah.
be right. So it gets it. And I think that might have even been the status then. Okay, I think I have to do the more research on that because the language to me again seems to be saying, oh, and those Indians, the ones not taxed, are not being counted, but the ones that are taxed are being counted. I think. All right,
Yeah.
we'll get the whole history on that. But again,
Yep.
ooh, hit my little thing. But again, what we're talking about, we were talking about three-fifths compromise that addressed people servitude for years. All whole, starting with whole people, and then it addressed Native Americans, American Indians at some point. That was it.
Right.
Didn't say
Yep.
anything about people here without a green card or without some kind of documentation. Didn't address that. So we fast forward. You're saying, and it was Mr. Howard, I think you did what you read from the Mr. Howard guy who's behind this the language of the 14th Amendment. He's a gentleman addressing all this other stuff related to people here not legally. Fair?
Yes.
Then I
Yeah.
think that stuff can be pushed back on the census. Because
So do
I
I.
think logically, if you're going to say in the 14th Amendment, because you do this piggyback with what the legislative intent was or the intent of the framers of the 14th Amendment, if that language was there and it would exclude people that are not in a legal status with documentation, then I don't know why the hell you couldn't take that same kind of view back to the to the original language of the census. And it
I
may have
agree.
been something that just wasn't contemplated. But in other words, if you're not like American citizen for the purpose of the 14th Amendment, why would you be counted in the census?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Why?
think that's all fair.
Yeah. We're going to see in
All
the
right.
next
So you
couple of
want to,
months.
well, let's get you lined up to go to D.C. You want to argue this before the Supreme Court?
I would be more than
I
happy
think you're
to.
ready.
Yes, I
I
will
think
be
you're
more than
ready.
happy. But I just want to tell this quick
Okay. So,
story.
mhm. Yes, sir.
In closing, several
Yes,
years
sir.
ago, I was up in D.C., Arlington to be exact, at Arlington
Hmm.
Cemetery, and
Which
I
is in
was
Virginia.
going to take. I was actually going to see. This is 2017, so it was the 100th anniversary of the ending of the Great War, World War One. And I'm waiting for the bus because I'm on Fort Myer at the time. I'm waiting for the bus to come and pick us up to take us to the the amphitheater. And while I'm there,
The
and
tomb of the
anyone who's
unknown.
yes, that's on the other side of the
I
amphitheater.
love that. Yeah.
So
It's beautiful.
so
Right.
anybody
Exactly.
who's
Right.
ever been
Right.
there, they if you ever get a chance to go over to the chapel, that is the oldest part of this, one of the oldest parts of the cemetery. And there's a lot of
Right.
gravestones over there that just say citizen. So all it says is citizen. And those
Wow.
gravestones were for the ex-slaves who were freed, and then they didn't know what to do with them. They didn't know what to call them, and it just put
Now, let
citizen
me
up
ask
there.
you something if you know.
Sure.
Was
Yeah.
that part of the Arlington house where the Lee home was?
No,
They were
this
slaves
is
to that, or
this
they were slaves
this is
serving in the
different.
Union Army?
I think
Okay.
there were slaves serving in the Union Army, but actually just people who fought on the side of the, whether it be
Got it.
contraband
Got
or
it.
actual,
Right.
enlistment.
Right.
But no, the chapel's a little ways away from the Arlington house. Yeah, it's a little
Right.
ways away from it. And when I say right beside the chapel, I mean literally. There's a chapel, and then there's a brick wall, if
Hmm.
you want to call it a pony wall, and then right on the other side of the brick wall is when you start seeing those citizen gravestones, and you can
Right.
look at the dates and tell that a lot of these people were killed like either during the Civil War or immediately after, or they died immediately after the Civil War was over with, and that's where they put them. So yeah, and they were
Yeah.
just labeled as citizen.
So for those listening that aren't from the part of the world we're from, when Congress set out to build this capital city, and I'll ask him, I'll put you on the spot. What was the first capital of the United States?
It was New York,
That's correct. What was the second
yeah,
capital of the United States?
Philadelphia,
You're correct. What was the third
yeah,
capital of the United States?
it was Washington D.C.
Washington,
Yeah,
D.C.
yeah,
Right. Very good. I knew you'd
mhm,
get that. So when they're going through that, you have a exact 10 by 10, 100 square miles.
yeah,
Northern side in Maryland and the bottom side. Virginia got back their part in 1846.
all right,
For whatever reason, I think it was kind of like they thought, well, it's kind of crazy to have it, the Potomac running right through the middle of the city. So Virginia got its part back. So I took a class trip up there a few years ago, and we were at Arlington, and one of the kids like, Coach, what part of D.C. are we in? I'm like, well, you're actually in Virginia right now. And then the Pentagon, they didn't know the Pentagon was in Virginia. So, and I remember
mhm,
that, with the 9/11 attack, everybody kept saying in D.C. got attacked. Like, well, actually, the plane didn't go down in D.C. It actually went down in
right,
the
right,
Pentagon's in Arlington, or it's in Virginia. So anyway, that being said, yeah, that Third Infantry, Fort Myers, the old guard there, when they're doing the Tomb of the Unknown, that's, man, if that doesn't get all over you as an American,
yes,
that
yeah,
is, I've been there so many
mm,
times, and I've seen some really impressive
yeah.
people do that, and it's God bless
One
them. That's really special.
one last thing, or maybe this last thing about
Yes,
the
sir.
the
Yes, sir.
10 by 10 square.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where one of the most easily, I don't know how to put this. There is a marker that most people don't know that there is a marker there because that was actually I think it was the
Is it in the
eastern,
center? You mean?
no, actually it's the
Okay, go ahead.
eastern corner of that square, what used to be the square. And
Okay.
hundreds of thousands of people probably pass by it every day and don't realize that it's over there. If you're going
Okay.
to
So when you're talking about the diamond, you're saying it's you're at the eastern edge of where the
the
two lines
eastern edge of
meet.
the
Wow.
diamond,
Okay.
or
And
what
there's
it
a
used to
marker
be,
there.
yeah, it's
Okay,
there.
got you.
If you're going up
Wow.
95 on 495, well, technically that's 95 on the
Yep.
east
Yep.
side.
Right.
When
Right.
you get when you're about to cross over the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, there's a
Mm-hmm.
house over there on the right hand side. That marker
Mm-hmm.
is in that house. That used to be
Wow.
the eastern boundary of DC. It's still there.
Gotcha.
It's I never
Well,
knew this.
I think I saw something about the other boundaries. Weren't there? There was one to each part, right? There was a northern and
Yes.
western as well on the Maryland side, right?
Oh, all
And
the
then the
boundaries are
southern one
still
would have
there.
been in the
They're
yeah.
still there.
Okay. I think I did see. Yeah. Somehow I do think I remember something about that. Maybe seeing something about a photograph of the one in Virginia on the Virginia side down at the southern tip.
Yeah, that
Because
one
I
I
think the
think.
land.
Well, if you think about it,
What
not
I'll
think about
give you the yeah.
it, the boundaries are technically still there because Arlington is still in the shape of the diamond. It's part of the
Oh yeah,
diamond.
that's right. It's
So
what was given back. Yeah.
right, it was what was given back. So yeah, they're the markers are still there. Even there's a whole bunch in Maryland. I don't think there's as many in Virginia, but I do know for sure that that one on the eastern boundary is in that house right beside the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, still there, and it's I think it's under glass or
Here's
something like that.
yeah. Okay, what do you think is the square miles of Washington D.C.?
I can't remember what it is now. 63?
68.334. So that yeah, 68.34.
Well, I was close.
So
Okay.
I was going to say it's like a direct percentage. It was 100 square
Yeah.
miles
Right.
originally. So that means Washington D.C. is bordered by Maryland in the east and south of Virginia. Blah blah blah. Geography of Washington D.C. 62. Oh, this is saying 62 square miles. No, sorry, it's how to measure. All right, I'm just going to check this real quick for all the listeners. Virginia Act to return Arlington. Let's see. I think it's 1846. Yeah, it's called retrocession. The act to return
Okay.
Arlington, along with the parts of Alexandria to Virginia, is known as the retrocession, which occurred in 1847. Damn it, I missed it by a year. I thought
Yeah, it's all right.
1846.
It's okay.
This decision was influenced by local dissatisfaction with Congress's management of the area and the desire for better economic opportunities. And well, let's see. No, it's like a lot of that stuff that we think of, not the Capitol, but a lot of the other stuff along the mall and the Lincoln Memorial, although my guest at one time said that was there for hundreds of years and they just kind of dug it up. Remember that guy? Yeah,
Yes.
you do. Come on,
Yeah, I
Yeah, okay,
remember.
right. But it was actually opened like 1914, which is one of the questions I ask. I'm like, why did it have 39 pillars? If it had 39 pillars, it was the representation of all the states at the time that it was
Right.
constructed. All right. So anyway, yeah. What else is this? Oh, yeah. So at the time, the Washington Monument wouldn't have existed. The Lincoln Memorial wouldn't have existed. So none of that stuff would have been there in 1847. So probably down on that south side, there wasn't a lot of activity. You have the Capitol. I mean, gosh, think of all the things that haven't been built yet by 1847.
A
The
lot.
White House is clearly there by then, right?
Right.
And down Pennsylvania Avenue, and then you get the Capitol. But yeah, I mean, all that we think of, Smithsonian, all that stuff, that's coming much later, late 19th century into the early 20th century. What was the
Right.
Washington Monument? 1880 ish?
I
Not
I
not
couldn't
the
tell you right
Washington
offhand.
Memorial.
Yeah.
I think it's 18. Yeah, the Washington Memorial. Well, we're taking a lot of shots at something that happened. That ought to get us some comments. All
It's
right.
all right.
Anything else you want to say in closing? We figured out a lot of stuff. We've taken care of birthright citizenship, and we've taken care of our view on the U.S. Census and who
Yes.
should be counted and who should not be counted. Anything else you want to add, sir?
I can't wait to hear what the Supreme Court has to say about this. I think it's going to be
Man, we'll do a show on that.
detrimental to one side and a benefit to the other. Yes.
Well, kind of what I was saying like an hour ago when we first started talking about this. I wish we came around to a world where at least a high percentage of people understood that things that should be followed from the time that was written. If you want to it's like it's the old saying, don't end it, amend it, meaning the Constitution. There is Article 5, it has a whole amendment process. If you don't like it, if you want to amend it too, count everybody and all that, see if you have the political will to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
God bless
you.
you.
Good luck. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Take it easy,
see you
bro.
again on the other side. Yep. Love you, brother. All right. See you again on the other side for more to consider.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.